Good evening. Good evening. I'm Fred Asaf. I'm the head of school here at Pace Academy, and I want to give you a hearty welcome to this evening's event. As an academic institution dedicated to creating confident citizens of the world, we strive to teach our students to think critically, to ask thoughtful questions, and to consider all sides of an argument. Rather than shying away from difficult or complex topics, Pace students and graduates engage in these conversations that shape our society while holding true to our core value of respect for others and their unique ideas and beliefs. Tonight we have a special program. Emily Giffen is a New York Times #1 best-selling author of 8 novels, a graduate of Wake Forest University and the University of Virginia School of Law. She lives in Atlanta with her husband, Buddy, who's here, and her 3 Pace children, who are Pace students who are here, her children. And there could not be a more enthusiastic fan of the Knights, some might say too enthusiastic. Van Jones rose to fame as CNN political commentator. I know he is known to most of you, and host of the recurring CNN primetime special, The Messy Truth with Van Jones. A graduate of the University of Tennessee at Martin and Yale Law School, he was a special advisor to the Obama White House and is the author of 3 New York Times bestsellers, including Beyond the Messy Truth, which debuted on the list this past week. Mr. Jones founded the social justice accelerator, the Dream Corps, and has built and led numerous social justice and pro-ecology enterprises, including the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights, Color of Change, and Green for All. He has earned many honors, including the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leader designation, Rolling Stone's 12 Leaders Who Get Things Done, Fast Company's 12 Most Creative Minds on Earth, and Time's 100 Most Influential People in the World. He is the founder and CEO of Magic Labs Media, which runs messytruth.com. Van lives with his wife and 2 children in the Los Angeles area. We hope they move back here and attend Pace. As I read Mr. Jones's book over the last week, the following quote spoke to me and to our mission as a school, and I quote from his book: "A well-rounded citizen must develop the poise and skill to speak her or his own truth, and to win tough arguments, even in the face of outrageous provocation. It is better to counter offensive speech with illuminating speech. We, as schools, should challenge minds and spark thoughtful, impassioned conversation. I have no doubt that tonight's conversation will do just that." Kevin, would you roll the reel? Thank you.
This guy had 5 lawsuits against him, 27 formal complaints against him, but he was still on the police force. We have a massive human rights catastrophe. The lead means to go first, but often the leaders are afraid to go first.
It's hard to be a parent tonight for a lot of us. You tell your kids, don't be a bully. You tell your kids, don't be a bigot. You tell your kids, do your homework and be prepared. And then you have this outcome, and you have people putting children to bed tonight, and they're afraid of breakfast. They're afraid of, how do I explain this to my children? To use the mics?
Yes. Is it better?
Apparently so.
So it's been about a year since the election, an incredibly ugly, divisive time. It's been a year later. Here we are. There's still a lot of conflict, and no matter what side you're on, I think we can all agree with that. And in this atmosphere, I think a lot of us are looking for ways to come together. And this man right here, I think, is the best at that dialogue. Leading the conversation, not only does he have the insight and the political acumen, but he's one of the most compassionate listeners out there. He really listens. It's incredible. So I'm just thrilled and honored to be with him here tonight. Full disclosure, we're both writers, we're both lawyers. That's not the full disclosure, maybe the lawyer part, but I am a liberal. I know it's shocking. But I aspire to be more like Van Jones. I really do. Van, I loved your book. I've read it twice. It's amazing. I highlighted it. You're going to sign it later. And I love the work you're doing towards unity. So thank you so much for giving us this honor of being here tonight.
I'm really glad to be here.
Okay. Ready?
Yes.
I'm nervous. Okay. I couldn't be more nervous if Obama were here.
Oh,
I'm glad it's Van, though.
You would be more nervous.
I would.
Yes, you would.
I couldn't be happier. Okay, so before we dive into the book, let's just get the elephant in the room, today's news, your thoughts about it. You mentioned in the back room, you said no questions were off limits, so you mentioned in the back room that it gave liberals false hope. What do you mean by that? Tell us about that.
Well, the indictments have come down, et cetera, and I've gone all around the country. Even before the election, I was very concerned. I was pretty sure that Trump was on a pathway to win, even though most of my progressive friends thought I was crazy. But I also think that progressives were underestimating how things would have been had Hillary Clinton won. You would have had a very large number of people who would have bought the narrative that it was a rigged election. You might have had an armed Tea Party response. We had a Tea Party response to Obama. No telling what you would have had with Hillary Clinton. So my concern was that the country was going to be ungovernable no matter who won. And so I was going into red states and red counties and going into the homes of Trump voters and trying to understand stuff. And it was out of that the messytruth.org emerged, and I put up a bunch of videos that got 1 million views in one day, and I got a Webby Award, and I was pretty pleased with myself. And then the election happens, and it's pretty bad. So I've gone all over the place. I got a chance to talk to a lot of people, West Virginia, Appalachia, the Arizona-Mexico border, South Central Los Angeles, literally all over the country, just listening. And the book is really informed by that process. One thing I know about a lot of progressives is they're kind of bummed still. There's a morning kind of ritual called reach for cell phone, freak out, and then just freak out all day, and then go to bed and do it again. So one of the sources of psychological comfort for progressives is imagining that Trump is going to be impeached and removed from office, which is of course, high fantasy. This is more like Iran-Contra than Watergate. In other words, people will go to jail. It'll be a stain on the Trump presidency, but Reagan had a very similar set of problems. A bunch of his people went to jail, but it didn't end the Reagan presidency. And similarly, just to be clear, no political party has ever in the history of the country impeached its own president. This just doesn't happen. Bill Clinton was impeached by Republicans. Johnson was impeached by his opponents in the 1800s. It just doesn't happen. And if these Republicans did impeach this president, then it would go to the Senate. And two-thirds of the Senate would have to vote to remove a sitting president. Now, you don't have two-thirds of the senators who agree that they're all senators. So the idea that that's going to happen seems highly unlikely. And then people say, well, but Nixon wasn't impeached, he wasn't convicted, but he quit. And I just would point out that Nixon, for all his faults and flaws, did have a sense of shame. So I just don't think that any of those scenarios are likely. And so I think that it's very important for progressives and frankly for Republicans who despair at the tone and the direction of the country to really look in the mirror and try to figure out how we got here. For me, I have small unemployed people who live in my house, and I watch them, and when they go to a sporting event, soccer, all that kind of stuff, which they play every Saturday, it's always the same thing. Whenever they say, this team we're playing is trash, they are just trash. There's no way they're gonna win. They suck. They're like ranked 13, we're 2, we're gonna kill these guys. It's always the same. Afterwards, tears, just tears. And the referee cheated, and the other team sucked, and the soccer pitch was lumpy, and Comey, and the Russians, and just and you just kind of have to let them have that moment for a while. But if you're a good parent, or if you're a good grandparent, or if you're a good coach, at some point you have to say, okay, look, fine, maybe all that's true. But is there anything that we could have done differently? Is there anything that we need to learn so it doesn't happen again? And so that's kind of where I want us to be as a country. It's like, okay, I get all that. So listen, there'll be plenty to tweet about, plenty to be upset about. There'll be plenty for both sides to be mad about around these indictments. At the end of the day, people will go to jail. Trump will still be president. So if you think that's great, be happy. If you think it's sad, be sad. But nobody I have met loves the way the country feels right now, and I'm trying to do something about that.
Okay, Van, let's back up a little bit to learn a little more about you. For those who haven't read the book and only know you from CNN, tell us about your early background. Do you need help with that, Van?
I'm good.
Your childhood, your family. Just kind of take us.
It's funny because a lot of people think like I was born at CNN, like just right there, like on the. So, it's really good.
I'm signaling for them to take pictures.
Oh, good. Yeah, very good. So I was not born on the set of CNN on election night. My face reads younger on TV than I am. I'll be 50 years old next year. I was born in 1968. And I'd like to, my father was born in 1944 in Memphis, Tennessee, in a place called Orange Mound, Memphis. Yeah, exactly. Which at the time was the biggest black ghetto in the country. He grew up in what I later realized was a shotgun shack. And segregation, poverty, but he joined the military to get out of poverty. Everybody else was running out of the military. My dad was running into the military. He got out, he put himself through college, and he married the college president's daughter, my mother, because my dad had it like that. You see, my dad, Willie Jones, he was bad. So he also, he put his little brother through college, he put his cousin through college. Working with my mom, they put my twin sister and myself through college. So, that whole kind of journey, fighting to get out of poverty, fighting for civil rights. I was born with all that. And I wound up going to Yale for law school. And when my father died, the picture that we put on the program for the funeral program was my father standing in front of Yale Law School with his hands in the air because his son had made it from his point of view. And I think that we sometimes underestimate the heroism of our cause. Those of us who want America to work and for democracy to work. This is a really weird thing we're doing. You have 10,000 years of human history where it would be perfectly acceptable for the people on this side of the room to say they were in one tribe and then just to come over and just kill everybody on this side of the room. Why? Well, they're not in our tribe. That for 10,000 years, that was just normal. Now we live in a country, 300 million people, every kind of human being ever born. Every race, every faith, every gender, every sexuality, every kind of human being ever born in one country, and we mostly get along. That's kind of a miracle in human history. What happens, though, sometimes, especially for liberals and progressives who have leaned the hardest into this project of trying to expand democratic rights, expand the conception of justice, to have this idea that my tribe is everyone. My tribe is 7 billion people, and I want to respect the rights of all of them. I see all of them as equal to me, all of them as deserving dignity. That's a crazy idea. That's an insane idea. And one of the disservices I think that sometimes progressives do to ourselves is that we think, well, that's just obvious. That's just obvious. And we don't have to make that case. Like, it's kind of like my kids, It's like, I tell them, clean up your room. They say, I cleaned it up on Saturday. Why should I have to clean it up again? It's like, because it's a mess now. It's like, no, I already did that. And that's how we are. Well, we already made the case for justice. We already had Dr. King and Ella Jo Baker. We already elected Obama. Well, I should never have to do this again. No, you will spend 10,000 years making this argument, to robots at some point. Because it's a very tough argument to make. The easy thing to do, always on the left or the right, is to divide people based on a problem. The hardest thing to do is to unite people based on a solution. So whenever you're in a situation where there's a lot of stress on a society, you always have demagogues that rise up and try and divide people based on the problem. And I think part of what I'm observing with the progressives is that they are psychologically and spiritually re-triggered and re-traumatized. Because most progressives lie to you and to themselves. They say, well, we're rational. Those conservatives, they're irrational. My God, they're so irrational. We are Spock-like beings, We're rational. We believe in science and all sorts of stuff. And yet, they can't watch any movie without bursting into tears. They're the most emotional, compassionate people. And it has to do with the fact that a lot of people who are on the progressive side, the women, people of color, kind of big-hearted, softy people, often were bullied. Often bullied. Or they watched people being bullied. And it bothered them. And you think about, yourself if you fall in that category. Often people who are progressives, man, they sometimes cried more for the kid that was being mistreated than that kid was crying for him or herself. Couldn't stand to see a dog get kicked. Couldn't watch horror movies. Their cousins could watch horror movies. They couldn't watch horror movies because they were too sensitive. And so people like that have then spent a lot of time in their lives trying to figure out how to deal with this trauma. Also, Muslim or Jewish or person of color, woman, there's historical stuff there as well. So suddenly they find themselves in a situation where their experience is the biggest bully ever won. The bully won. And now the bully is antagonizing me, is taunting me. And so this isn't really a political problem for the left. It's more of an emotional, spiritual, psychological problem for the left. And when I tell people, do you guys know Trump came down the escalator more than 2 years ago? You've been doing this for 2 years. You've been freaking out every day for 2 years. Now, some people say, well, Donald Trump is crazy. Well, there may be some evidence to support that claim. But there are two kinds of crazy. There's narcissism, but there's also doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and expecting a different outcome. And so part of my message to my fellow progressives is, you're on track for 8 years of this stuff. You're on track for 8 years of this stuff because you keep doing the same thing. Donald Trump is the most powerful president in the history of presidents because he not only runs the White House, he runs your house if you're a liberal. He runs your house. You wake up every day and get your daily dose of re-traumatizing, re-triggering tweets, and then you spend your whole day in ways that don't serve you, and you do it again and again and again. And so what I'm trying to suggest...
Dan's been on my Facebook page again.
Yeah. So anyway, not yet. But, you know, what I'm trying to suggest is that, you know, both parties have some blind spots. And both parties have a real reason to look in the mirror. Because whoever you voted for or didn't vote for, whoever you voted against, this isn't good. This isn't good. If we don't change course, we're going to end up where we're headed. And where we're headed is very bad. You know, democracies can fail. Usually democracies fail. And so, you know, my caution really for both sides, and obviously I'm a strong progressive, we can talk about that. My caution for both sides is the politics of accusation, where every American conversation is now simply, I'm right and you're wrong. I'm right and you're wrong. Doesn't matter, left, right, wherever you are, I'm right and you're wrong. Or worse, we're right and they're wrong. We're not even talking to each other, we're talking about each other. That condition does not allow the country to solve problems. And at some point, the problems win. You know, well, I want my party to win. I want my party to win. No, at some point, the problems win because we're stuck. And so I'm trying to make it safe for a different conversation to at least run alongside the other one. And it's not about a politics of accusation, it's about a politics of confession, where I can point out where I think I might have made a mistake. Hopefully it makes you able to talk where you might have made a mistake. And then, you know, maybe, you know, if we're, you know, lucky, we might actually discover some area where we might be able to make some progress, even if we still are fighting about some things. I don't mind us fighting about some things. But you can't only fight and still have a country. And so the areas where progressives can't back down, I'm not going to turn my back on Muslims or immigrants or LGBT. I mean, like, I'm just not going to do it. I can tell you why later on, but I'm just not going to do it. So on that stuff, we just have to fight. We just have to fight and fight and fight. I'm never going to, I'll vote against you, you vote against me, we're just going to have to fight. But we literally could just like agree, like, let's fight between like 9 and noon. And then from like noon to 1, actually do something. And then just fight again for the rest of the day. Like, I'd take that deal. Because there is stuff we agree on. Beyond the battleground, there is common ground on criminal justice reform, on opioids and addiction, on the need to change the way we're educating our kids for the jobs of tomorrow. There's common ground that we're not doing bupkis about because we're usually fighting about tweets.
I feel so ashamed. Tell us, what did you tell your kids? We saw that on the reel. We heard you talk about that. I was very glad personally that my kids were embedded. We didn't have to talk about it till breakfast. What did you tell your children? And are they obsessed with it? Do they follow this stuff? Or are they kind of, and how does your wife handle it? Tell us all about her as well.
Well, the big problem I had that night, and we're all friends, so I can just tell the truth. The big problem I had that night was that my kids live in California. I live in California, and we shoot in D.C. So I wasn't with my family. I was in D.C. So my wife is texting me, "You need to call home. The boys are very upset. You need to call home." I'm on set. I can't call home. You're like, the Anderson's right there. Like, it's not. I can't call. I'm trying through telepathy. Like, I can't call home. We're on live television. So when they actually come to me, I was literally talking to my family. Like, I was talking to my boys because the West Coast, they were still up. And
You wrote 2 notes. You said in the book. What were your 2 notes?
I wrote one thing I wrote was parents, and the other I wrote was white lash. Because I thought that the way the conversation had developed over the course of the night, at least on CNN, I don't know what the other people did, but on CNN, the numbers, the math was so shocking to the smart people. The intuitives like me were like, we're going to lose. Like, we're going to be crushed like bugs, But the smart people were like, ho, silly boy. So, we were kind of in this kind of situation where for them, they were so shocked, and they were having to kind of like undo all their stuff and like reprogram. They were literally having to like reprogram. It was a lot going on, and we hadn't talked about the human part. And I thought it was important to talk about the human part. And also, we had talked about literally everything: region, income, gender. I'm like, I'm the only Negro male up here. Do I have to be the one to talk about race? Can I talk math? Jake, no, it's gonna be me. I'm gonna have to be the one to, okay, well, fine, So,
You said people misunderstood on both sides white lies.
yeah, and they did understand, but you know what? People forget. Like, I'm way more famous now than I was then.
No, you were famous then.
No, only for news nerds. But like, the election. Don't forget now. It's very difficult inside the United States for people to keep this straight. Nobody in Ghana has Fox News. Okay? Nobody in Bangladesh has MSNBC, okay? Nobody in Dalian, China is trying to hack to listen to PBS NewsHour. CNN on election night in the United States, it's like 40, 80 million global viewers, live. And then if something goes viral, like, I don't know, white lash, then so I'm way more visible and famous now than I was then. I say this because being just one person of a whole sea of people all wanting to say something, and you have people from the campaign who want to be interviewed, and you've got data coming in. When you get the mic, you don't have much time. And so what I got very good at doing over the course of the campaign was concision. Was being able to be smart with heart. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm like, I'm going to have a very narrow shot to take on the race question before they've got to move on. And I'm like, I got 2 syllables, white lash.
Had you thought of that before?
My wife actually had said this term.
Knew it?
Yes.
Knew it was Jana?
Yes.
It's always the woman.
Yes. No, we were talking about this whole wave of nativist, populist, racially tinged, momentum ripping throughout the West. With Brexit and the rise of a lot of neo-Nazi parties in Europe, and I was very concerned about it. I said, look, we're going to have to really, I'm black and she's not, so and our kids are mixed, and so we have very, deep conversations about this stuff, and she's, very, very tough anti-racist, and she said, look, it's coming to the United States, and I said, yeah, I said the backlash here, and she said, it's going to be a white lash, and I was like, oh, you smart. I said, oh, I know I'm married you for a reason. So I was like, oh, so that just stayed in the back of my mind. So I had it, and I'm good at identifying little words that kind of like break through, and sometimes I don't make them up. I just find them, but I keep them, and use them at the right, so like green jobs. I got, was initially known for helping President Obama on clean energy, but you start trying to explain people workforce development and community economic, stuff for clean energy. Green jobs, 2 syllables, green jobs. Then you framed it and then you can explain it. My position on the whole Russia thing, if you think it's going to result in an impeachment, nothing burger, right? So then, like the word nothing burger is now in the dictionary. White.
Coined that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone copies that.
Yeah, white lash, nothing burger.
White lash was yours, right?
Yeah. Green jobs. So not coined, popularized. I find them and I use them.
But I'm
Yeah,
saying
exactly. Yeah, but yeah. So anyway, so it's fun if you're in the communications business. It's fun to see your stuff in the dictionary. But my point is that because I knew I wasn't going to have much time. I said it was a white lash in part.
You did say in part.
In part, against the sitting president, against the first black president, and against a changing country. And I didn't want, and also before that I said it was many things. It was a rebellion against the elites. It was.
We've talked about all of this.
Yeah, so we talked about other stuff, but we won't talk about this. So I wanted to hit it hard to make sure that we weren't sitting up there not saying anything about the obvious. But people on both sides misunderstood. I think that for Trump voters, they thought I was saying that every person who voted for Donald Trump was a racist or a bigot or a Nazi or something like that. And they were very upset about that. And then I think that liberals thought that's what I was saying, and they're very happy about that. So, but that wasn't what I was saying. I was trying to point out, and it's very hard, live TV is very, very hard, but I was trying to point out that there's an element in the Trump coalition that we've got to be very worried about. That there's an element in the Trump coalition that is explicitly white supremacist, explicitly anti-Jewish, explicitly. And so I'm not saying, and I don't believe that all of the Trump voters are neo-Nazis. What I'm concerned about, though, is that all the neo-Nazis are Trump voters. And that's got to be worrying for conservatives, because there's nothing in conservatism that requires any racist view. I mean, the conservative philosophy is one of the great sources of strength for the country. The liberal philosophy is as well. And part of what's happened is we've gotten so far away from that basic respect. I've never seen a bird fly with only a left wing. I've never seen a bird fly with only a right wing. It takes 2 wings to fly. And you can't, if you get away from that, that's when everything goes bad.
You said something about having a little bit of disdain for the people who just try to compromise all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about that.
Well, look, I'm a leftist. I'm not a centrist. And people think, Van's like, oh, thank you for going to the middle ground. There is nothing in the middle but a yellow stripe and dead possums. I am not in the middle of nothing. That's not me. I'm not trying to find middle ground. I'm trying to find common ground, and that's different. You can find common ground in very odd places, like a prison cell. Newt Gingrich and I worked together to close prisons because
You like him, don't you?
I love Newt. I love Newt.
Tell him about that.
Yeah, let me come back to Newt. Let me say something though about this need for mutual respect, because I think it's gotten lost. It's almost like if you're on the left, you're my enemy. If you're on the right, you're my enemy, as opposed to my partner. And the kids get it right because they have to go to school and do the Pledge of Allegiance and all that. And the Pledge of Allegiance is masterful brainwashing for children, in that it says, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, this is tricky. Liberty and justice for all. Hold on, back up. Liberty is a right-wing concept. Liberty is a concept that says, get the government out of my way. I want to be free from government interference. I want to have the liberty to be myself, to do my thing, to make my money, without interference from tyranny. That is on the right on the political spectrum. Justice is more of a left-wing concept. Justice says, well, hold on a second, we're all for markets and all that kind of stuff, but can you have a great country if the only thing you do is stuff that corporations can make money off of? And we're all for individual people having their liberty, not being bothered by anybody, but what about the big groups that might run over the little groups? What about the strong groups that might run over the weak groups? What about justice? So liberty and justice really sit uneasily in the mouth together. And yet, if you have only justice, if the liberals win, people like me, if we win and we wipe out the conservatives, then you have justice and no liberty. What that tends to result in is totalitarianism. What that tends to turn into is too much government, government domination, over-regulation, over-taxation, and it's a nightmare. At the same time, if the conservatives would just wipe out the liberals, and you have all liberty and no concern for justice, you wind up with a different type of domination. You wind up with corporate domination. And corporations wind up poisoning your rivers and polluting your air and buying your media and buying your elections, and then it's another kind of nightmare. So what the genius of America is kind of recognizing, even the Pledge of Allegiance, that we need each other. We need each other. And we're supposed to fight. We're supposed to fight. Democracy means I get to disagree. Dictatorship, I don't get to disagree. I must agree. Dictatorship. Democracy, we get to fight. But there is constructive disagreement and there's destructive disagreement. And we've completely gotten away from all the philosophy that undergirds the country. Constructive disagreement means I am for government. I want a government answer to problems. You're for markets. You want a free market solution. If we fuss and fight and argue long enough, but keep listening, we might come up with a public-private partnership as a solution that's better than your idea or my idea. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis, something new, something better. That's the whole point. We just go, at least in my business, thesis, antithesis, commercial break. Now we're back. Thesis, antithesis, commercial break. And then we try to sell you some medicine that's going to kill you. Why do we sell you this stuff? Have you noticed how bad our commercials are? It's like, do you have asthma? Take this medicine. Side effects, shortness of breath. Why? But I digress. My only point is that we're supposed to get somewhere. Because at the end of the day, we need each other. I'm never going to stop being a progressive. But I love that Newt Gingrich is one of my closest friends. He's never going to stop being a right-winger. But man, when we come together on opioids, on criminal justice, juvenile justice, when Newt comes in and says, Vance talking all this racial stuff, that's Vance's thing. I'm going to tell you as a conservative, the prisons are a big failed government bureaucracy. I voted for them. But I'm going to tell you they're a big failed government bureaucracy that waste a ton of money, that give us a terrible outcome with no accountability. I got libertarians in my party, Newt Gingrich will tell you. I got libertarians in my party that are concerned about all the rights being gobbled up by the government under the guise of the prison system. And he'll tell you, Newt will tell you, as a conservative Christian, he doesn't see where is the redemption. Where is the redemption? Where is the second chances? You leave a physical prison, then you go into a social prison. You can't vote. You can't rent an apartment. You can't get a student loan. He says, as a conservative Christian, where's the second chances? So when Newt comes in as a conservative, and I come in as a progressive, we can get bills passed. We can make things happen. And then we go right back to fighting about the other stuff. That's how it's supposed to be. That's how it's supposed to be. And so, I'm not asking liberals and progressives to do stuff I don't do. Let's not forget, I left the White House under Obama under real fire, because I was left-wing, berserkly activist for most of my 20s. So by the time I'm in my 40s, I get to the White House, Fox News says, hey, this guy shouldn't be in the White House. Look at all the radical stuff he did when he was younger. And so, rather than, create more controversy for the president, I resign. Where did the money come from to launch that fight against me, to launch that smear campaign against me? The money came from an outfit called Koch Industries, okay? Not Coca-Cola, Koch Industries, that is always against the environment, and I was the environmental guy, always trying to mess up our democracy with $1, one vote stuff, but they're libertarians. So the same group that spent millions of dollars to get me out of the White House, do you know who I work with every day on prison reform? Koch Industries. You know why? Because we're supposed to fight where we don't get along. I'm an environmentalist. They're like terrible polluters. We're supposed to fight on that stuff. But where we agree, I'm a liberal, they're libertarians, we agree on prisons, we should work together. That's how it's supposed to be. Okay? So if I can put aside my differences with people who literally ruined my career and work with them to get folks home from prison. And by the way, I've never met anybody in prison who said, Van, I'm in prison. You got to get me out. But don't work with any Republicans. I've never heard that. So there's stuff that we do, in the political news nerd crowd that has nothing to do with reality. So I'm, in some ways, I'm trying to take a stand, for a particular way of being, that might let the country work, because we're going to disagree about a bunch of stuff. But we can disagree without disrespecting. And we can disagree without disregarding. And that's what we've got to fight for, because if we can keep the inflammation down, if we can keep the disrespect down, then when and where we can actually get something done, we might get something done. But also, it lets the country stay together while we get through some of this stuff. As a progressive, I have to remind people of two things. Number one, the reason that you have this reaction that Trump represents in politics is because we are winning in the culture. So you've now psychologically debilitated yourself to believe you're helpless, the country's against you, it's all terrible. No. You are winning culturally across the board. 5 years ago, Barack Obama himself was reluctant to admit that he was for marriage equality, that he was for gay marriage. It was Joe Biden that kind of accidentally said, and we're for it. And he was like, oh, Joe! So, this is 5 years ago. You remember that, 2012? It's Obama had to oh God, do an interview. It's like, well, and he's like, well, for me, myself personally, my kids go to school and they have, their friends have two mommies and whatever, very apologetic. I'm not going to pass any laws or impose it. 5 years ago, now, even the Republicans won't fight you hard on marriage equality. Okay, so, and I can point to 27 other things. So it's because we're winning so much in the culture that people go to politics to try and stop it. But that means you're powerful, not powerless. The other thing that liberals don't want to admit, which also makes them suffer more than they should, and it's hard to say this, especially now, but it's true. liberals didn't work that hard to stop Trump when they could have. Okay, they didn't really do anything. So all of this sort of like fanning and fainting or whatever might have been more useful a year ago. But instead, he can't win, it's impossible, he's a joke. And, you know, to try to understand, to put this in context, you know, I'm like a lay historian. You know, history matters a lot to me in trying to understand things. So I can go all the way back, you know, all the way back to like 2008. When people worked very hard. I remember when progressives, liberals, Democrats, even independents, I mean, people, 2008, people worked hard. People went to swing states. People had house parties. People volunteered phone bank. If your cousin said, you know, I'm not gonna vote, he had to go get a temporary restraining order against you. It was like, oh, you gonna vote, I'm gonna tell you that. You know, and it was 100% effort. You know, even in 2012. I mean, people went to the mat. People reached deep. People did everything they could possibly do to stop Mitt Romney. Whom I would not only vote for, I would give a lap dance to if he would come back and be president. I am for Mitt. Oh, please come back, Mitt. I was wrong. So, and so would you. So, since you didn't do anything, right? But seriously, since you didn't do anything, but, you know, tweet and post Facebook stuff and like be offended, but that's not actual work. That's not how you win elections. So since you didn't do anything, you're taking the wrong lesson. Liberals, progressives, we can talk about conservatives if you want to, but you're taking the wrong lesson. You're not powerless. When you stood up, you pushed the country in a totally different direction. And when you sat down, from your point of view, the country fell apart. That means you're not powerless. It means you're powerful. But you didn't use your power when you could have. So now you can sit here and insult everybody who actually did the work and elected their guy. You can sit up here and be freaked out every day, but being freaked out is not a strategy. Being freaked out every day is not a strategy. So you can keep doing it if you want to. You're just gonna have 8 years of this, and then you'll have Ivanka, and you might have 16 years. So, I mean, so just keep doing it. I mean, listen, if I were a conservative, I would pay you to do what you're doing. Because I'm serious. You're just offending a bunch of people who probably would be more with you if you wouldn't call them names all the time. And you're just freaking yourself out, which is just not very attractive. So, you know, we need better conservatives and we need better liberals. If you're a conservative, please stay in your party, because I got enough problems in my party. Don't come over here. I'm serious. Stay over there. Good luck. I've got 1,000 problems in my own party. But if you are going to be a conservative, be a great conservative. Like, no conservative should sit here and let Russia or anybody else mess with our democracy and not speak up for the country out of partisan stuff. That's not conservative. That has nothing to do with the conservative tradition. No conservative should be proud when the President of the United States tries to poke his nose into private industry, whether it's the NFL or corporate media. That's not in the Constitution. That's not consistent with conservative values. No conservative should want to see Muslims picked on, especially given that from a conservative point of view, Muslims are like some of the best Americans we've got. I mean, think about it. American Muslims are awesome. American Muslims, the lowest crime rate, okay? The lowest divorce rate, highest educational attainment for women, American Muslims, one of the highest entrepreneurial rates. I mean, look about every Muslim you know. They either have a job, a college degree, or a business. They're awesome, right? Every Muslim you know. If a Muslim moved next door to you, you would be so happy because the chances of your kids getting in trouble just went way down, way down. Muslims are amazing. So why are we supposed to be picking on Muslims? When, from a faith and family point of view, if you're conservative, these people are amazing. So, well, we're concerned about terrorism. I don't mean to be rude. But the majority of terrorists in the United States are not Muslim. So it doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense. If you really want to beat ISIS, here's how you beat ISIS. Uplift American Muslims and tell the whole Muslim world, do you want to be like these awesome, amazing people, or do you want to be chopping the heads off of folks for no reason? And you'll win it tomorrow. Quit terrorizing American Muslims and we'll be done with this stuff. So for me, my quarrel with my conservative sisters and brothers is not that I want them to be liberals. I'm liberal enough for many, many people. I don't even need any more, just me. I'm pretty progressive. I want them to be better conservatives. And so I have a whole third of the book. It's just a letter to conservatives, just pointing out all these opportunities. And again, and both sides can learn from this. Look, you can't put people down and then ask them to vote for you on either side. You can't put people down and then say, vote for me. Look at how the liberals do it, look how conservatives do it, and I'll get to your next question, but this is important to me. Liberals see this very easily. If we were honest with ourselves, we would acknowledge probably half of the black people in America should vote for Republicans. Probably half. You know, we got very socially conservative people in the black community. I mean, look at the two strongest black institutions. The church, that's some Republican stuff, right? I mean, that's like the church. Very conservative institution. I'm a Christian, I love it. But probably half the people in the church should probably be Republican. And the other institution that we have that's very strong is hip hop. Now, hip hop, nobody's rapping about welfare. People are rapping about like cars and jewelry, you know, that's Republican. People are rapping about a certain kind of entrepreneurship. That's Republican. So why don't half of black people vote for Republicans? Why did 96% of black women vote for Hillary Clinton? Why did 88% of black men vote for Hillary Clinton? By the way, 9 out of 10 black men voted for a woman to be in charge. 9 out of 10. So when they tell you black men are sexist or whatever, we certainly have those issues. But 9 out of 10 black men voted to have a woman in charge. 55% of white women voted for Donald Trump. So just be clear, you know, how messy this stuff can get. But my only point is simply, you know, what was my point? I digressed. I was going somewhere too. It was brilliant. It was gonna be amazing. Anyway, I'll come back to it later.
Well, okay, you
what? Oh yeah, so blacks should be Republicans. Thank you.
Thank you.
See, you're one of the 45%. But most black people, even though 90% of black people will never vote for Republicans. Why? Because if you watch Fox, almost every time they talk about black people, it's negative. It is so nasty and disrespectful toward African Americans. No respect for the incredible achievements and contributions. You know, black unemployment is about 11%. which means 89% of black people get up and go to work every day. Okay, yeah, we have way more unemployment than we're supposed to, but the vast majority of black people get up and work every day. No respect for that. So you can't vote. How am I gonna go vote for people who disrespect me? And then I'll say the same thing about Democrats. Every time you say straight white male, it's a put down. How are they gonna vote for you? And when you listen to some liberals talk, it's almost like red states and red counties. They talk about red states and red counties the way that colonizers talk about third world developing countries. You know, these ignorant, unwashed, uneducated idiots. They're so stupid. You know, they vote against their economic self-interest. They're just idiots. They need to be better educated. What we need to do, we need to convert them to our NPR religion and force feed them some kale, right? And raise them up to a better level, because these people suck, you know, they're terrible. Vote for me. Well, hold on. How is that gonna work? No respect, and yet vote for me. It doesn't work. It doesn't work on either side. And so I tell progressives all the time. I mean, I grew up in rural West Tennessee, and you know, I said, listen, you know, you guys are always putting down, you know, working class white guys and low income white people. Oh, they voted against their economic self-interest. You know, they should vote for Democrats. You know, because Democrats have better economic policy. I said, you know, I don't mean to be rude, but do you know the white people who vote against their economic self-interest every time? Rich white liberals who vote for tax increases to pay for programs their children will never, ever use, okay? That's voting against your economic self-interest. But we don't think that makes them stupid or awful. We think it makes them awesome. It's like the best thing about rich white liberals, you know? It's like, you're amazing. Keep doing that, you know? You're putting your values over your money. That's awesome, you know? Here's an award. Can I have a grant? So, and yet, what's good for the goose should be good for the gander. You know, a working class white guy who's voting for Republicans can say and mean it, I don't want America's government to go and rob some rich family and bring their money over to me and try to bribe me to be dependent on anybody. I don't want America's government to go and rob some rich family and then come over here and undermine my parenting choices. If my kids are so stupid, they're gonna drop out of school, do drugs, get pregnant, I don't want the government to bail them out. I want them to learn a tough lesson, because my values are independence and self-reliance. And I'll put that over my money every time. Now listen, I disagree with that as a strategy. I think it's a very bad strategy. It's not gonna help us beat China, but it's not stupid. It's consistent, it has nobility in it. I can disagree with it without disrespecting it. I don't have to say that you're a dupe and a racist and a fool who's being, you know, tricked by your corporate overlords into doing something dumb that hurts yourself. I can say, I just think it's a bad strategy to deal with China. And we can have a conversation. And even if we disagree, we're still in community with each other. Now, is it true that some people also don't like those programs because in their minds they imagine it's for a bunch of undeserving darkies, undeserving people of color? Yeah, that's also in there. And we can talk about that. But the fundamental idea that we're going to convince people to join our cause by putting them down doesn't work for either side.
Would you play golf with Trump if he called and asked you to? And
I can't play golf. I'm black, and we don't we don't really have that in the hood. You know,
would you hang out with him, and what would you say?
It would be very hard for me to. I'm very, very tough on Trump. I'm not tough on Trump voters, but I'm very, very tough on Trump because I don't think that Trump is a racist. I think he's worse than a racist. I think that Trump is a racial opportunist. That's much worse. Let me just say what I mean. If you're a racist, you would think, or you might say to yourself, I just think my group is better than your group. I just think, black people are better in this way and that way. I think white people are bad in this way, whatever it is. So you say, my group is good, your group is bad. I honor my group, I despise your group. I put my group on a pedestal, I put your group in the garbage can. That's what a racist does. That's terrible. There's only one thing worse than that, and that's a racial opportunist who actually is just using other people's racism to advance his or her cause. In other words, I think the black people are stupid and the white people are stupid. They're all stupid. And I'm just playing them against each other. And that's what I think his game is at the end of the day. And that's very hard for me. Like I pray a lot. I do a lot of meditation. It's very hard for me. So I think it would be hard for me to have the conversation with him.
So if he says Van, let's meet up tomorrow, 12 to 2. You'd say no?
I don't know that I would say no. I would have to pray about it. I would have to pray about it, and I would have to, because I would have to have some clear sense of what I could do. First of all, my liberal base would just go nuts, which they do every other sentence anyway. But I would have to pray about it. Now, the person I would most like to befriend is Ivanka.
You think you could make an inroad with her?
I don't know if I can make an inroad with her, but I can tell you, I know a lot of people who know Ivanka. And some, yeah.
I'm going to have him, and then I'm going to turn it over to the audience to ask questions, but I want you to bring your camera, and then everybody hold up your book.
Oh. Oh, that's good. Oh, thank you. That would be helpful.
And, hold up your book. Hold up your book, George. My boy's in the front. Get closer to the George.
Get one?
Closer to the George.
All right.
I greatly appreciate this, by the way. Hey.
I'm on camera.
Thank you for smiling while you're holding the book up, too. It's like, and those of you holding up, like, not helpful.
And I'm going to just I'm going to let people ask questions.
No, you have to stay here. Huh? Oh, I have to smile?
Van.
But you stay up here. Hi.
Van.
That's funny. No, stay. I don't want... Now I feel all weird. I don't know what's going to happen now. Ivanka? Oh, so y'all paying attention. They're like, I'm holding up this book, but you better not forget that story. I just know a lot of people who know Ivanka, who grew up with Ivanka, and her father's views are not hers. And can you imagine if, on either side, but given how extreme his views are and how extreme the statement of his views are, can you imagine like having to walk that tightrope every day? And so I like the messy stuff, I like it, messy truth. That's like, I'm gonna tell you right now, if anybody tells you a story and they are 100% right and the other person's 100% wrong, it's by definition a lie. Because there's nobody, even Donald Trump, people say, well, my God, how can you say anything about that man that's other than he's a Hitler? I'm like, well, okay, you want to play that game? Fine. TPP, the whole left of my party against the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We were going to have to fight Hillary Clinton because as much as she said she was against it, she was for it. He got in office and flushed it down the toilet. Kind of hard for me as a progressive to be mad about that. So, we can play the game if you want to. My point is that I am as a hardcore anti-Trump as you can possibly be, but even I have to recognize it's messy on trade issues, since I'm a leftist on trade issues. So, you know, I'd like to know Ivanka better, because she has to do a lot of mental work to get through the day, and you know, and so do I.
All right, so you're probably wondering, you know,
Yes.
why I'm here, and so am I. But you know, one of the questions, it seems as though Emily got faint in your presence, and you know, it's been the story of my love life that I've never had that impact, and so I want to know what.
There would be very few things that can get me off that stage.
She's not feeling great, so I'm going to take over. But we want to go to the Q&A now, and I thought, look at that. There are hands going up. What a great pace crowd. Yes, wait.
My nephew who flew in.
Oh, wait. The nephew is first, and then we go, okay. Who flew from Wisconsin? Just, do you need this?
And so look, I will probably take like 7 or 8 questions and not answer them at first.
You make a great teacher.
Yeah, I just, yeah. But let's just get a bunch of questions on the table, and then let me see what I can do to be useful.
All right. All right. Sam, stand up.
Hello. What was it like to work in the Obama administration, and would you ever consider running for public office?
Ooh, I think he's got some voters here. Okay. You want all the questions now, or you want, yeah. Oh, gosh, all right, yeah. Ladies, well, hey, I can help. Oh, wait, here we go. We got one here. Yes?
I've got the mic. First of all, thanks for coming. I was curious. A lot of people think that Steve Bannon's created a third party, you know, to kind of go up against the Democrats and Republicans. I've, for a long time, advocated that there should be a moderating third party. I was kind of curious what your thoughts were on that.
Okay, third party. All right. Hello.
Excuse me, sorry.
You can stay seated.
I can stay seated?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Banjo, this white lash is for real.
Hold the mic close to you.
Okay, what you call the white lash is for real. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. My legal residence. I'm an attorney. My daughter is here in Atlanta, but I work as an attorney in civil rights in Florida. And on my way to Florida, I stopped in Chattahoochee County to a book reading by Newt Gingrich. And the name of the book was Prison Break, because he admits that he, as the Speaker of the House and President Clinton, instituted the mass incarceration, which is now a serious problem in America. My question is to you. We need to deal with this issue of this white lash, which is based upon what Newt Gingrich is really about. He's a futurist professor at Georgia State. And he understands that we're now in a post-industrial revolution. When I was in school, everybody didn't worry about studying because they were going to Detroit and work in the factories. But now everything's automated and we have a need for a different economy. Can you think we can continue your relationship with Newt Gingrich and talk about a different economy? And what I mean by that, when I was standing in line, filing papers for incorporation for a nonprofit, charitable organization, behind me was a Cuban American father filing papers for a business corporation so that his son can go into business. This is in Latin. This is in Miami. Do you think we can begin changing the mentality so that we can overcome this white lash fear that exists in America?
Good question. All right, we've got more coming here. Wait, I have, it looks like a special one over here. Hold on.
What would Donald Trump say if he was here?
Will you promise me something first? Are you going to run for president?
Probably.
What do you think you might say?
I don't know. That's why I asked.
I told you he'd be a good teacher.
Here, can I go? I'm way up here. Okay. First of all, I love you. I love you so much. I just think you're great. I do. And I would love to know your opinion if you feel like Jeffrey Lord believes the things that he says when the two of you are debating.
And I actually am wondering over here, we haven't really talked about Trump's tweeting very much, and I really don't see how we could have any discussion about him without talking about Twitter, and I'm really just wondering what your thoughts are on his tweets, and especially when he's tweeting things about like national policy and things about important things like that.
All right. Oh, a couple more.
Here you go. What do you think about the electoral vote system? Yes,
Coming up,
me.
it's right up here.
Right here.
It's in the middle.
Thank you.
Is that you got enough yet? You need more.
Last one. Last one.
Just kidding.
I was hoping you could talk more about children and how to handle this conversation with kids.
That's a good one. What we got? You want more or no?
Listen to besides CNN.
Oh.
What would you have us listen to? Pod safety people. What should we be reading? How should we expand our horizons?
I would suggest Helen Smith's European history class. Yeah, go ahead, one more here. Shout it out loud.
UT Martin University and Yale Law School. How did it prepare you for what you do today?
How did UTM prepare me for Yale, or how did Yale, or how they both prepare me for this?
Both.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Oh,
Good.
can we one more? She's kind of like my favorite student. Melanie?
What are some ways teenagers can affect change?
And she can get it done too, so good. All right.
All right, good. So, people always ask if I'm going to run, and I can say no. And sometimes I waver a bit between no and hell no. Having served in the Obama White House and seen up close, I think the best ever do it, and also seeing how much the system wasn't prepared to accept his gifts. I think we got a lot to do to make it possible for people to run and do a good job. I think we got, big money makes it very, very hard. The gerrymandering makes it hard. People talk about how 3 million more people voted for Hillary Clinton than Trump. But 1.4 million more people, altogether, voted for Democrats to go to the House of Representatives. And yet the House is still in Republican hands. When you have 3 million more people vote for somebody to be the president, but the person with the small number of votes wins, and then you have 1.4 million more people, you pile up everybody that voted for to send a Democrat to the House, everybody who voted to send a Republican to the House, we had 1.4 million more. So you now have one party rule, but it's minority rule, one party minority rule in Washington, D.C. That is very, very bad. And I talk about it in my book, it's bad for Republicans. Because if you can engineer, anytime you falsely engineer an outcome, eventually reality catches up to you. And so that's really, really bad. So I don't want to run. I want to work to try to clean up the system, stop the gerrymandering, deal with the big money, and then my role in particular, try to clean up this toxic media culture that makes it really impossible for anybody to do anything or say anything. I get, but I tell you, I loved working in the Obama White House, and whatever you feel
about Trump from a policy and politics point of view. I think he's debasing that building. When I worked there, I mean, I got goosebumps every morning. You know, you walk in there, you wanted to stand up a little bit straighter. You really felt, and it starts at the top. It starts at the top, plus Valerie Jarrett would kick your ass, but you know, it started at the top, you know, and the idea that you would play close to the line on anything is just inconceivable in the Obama White House. Like if the line were here for doing something wrong, we wanted to be in the next building. And that's true. I mean, it's just the way that building operates, the way that the Obamas were. And it hurts. It really hurts. I mean, it's like if you're a pilot and you know what that checklist is supposed to be like, and you know all the things that have to happen to make sure that plane does not crash. And then, you know, you get on a commercial flight, and then, you know, you look in the cockpit and they got dancing bears in there and, you know, all kind of weird stuff and, you know, cheerleaders and like, what the, none of that is supposed to be happening in the cockpit. So it's you know, so it's bad. You asked. Jeffrey Lord believes every single word of what he says, and that's why I love Jeffrey Lord. Jeffrey Lord, say what you want about Jeffrey Lord. He was right from the beginning. He was right from the very beginning, and everybody laughed at him, including, you know, me. We called him names, we picked on him, and he was the last person standing when it was all said and done. And Jeffrey Lord says that same stuff on camera, during a commercial break, after the show, in the green room wiping the makeup off, in the elevator, in the Uber, in the hotel lobby, in the elevator, going into his hotel room, he's saying the same thing. So unlike a lot of people who just say whatever, I love Jeffrey Lord for two reasons. One, all that, from my point of view, crazy stuff, he believed every word. And his mom is sick, and his mom has the same illness that my mom has. And so, you know, during that whole, you know, season, we were checking on each other about our parents and trying to figure out how to help each other. So, you know, it's okay. It's okay to have a country where people don't agree on stuff. And I'm glad that, you know, Jeffrey Lord and I were kind of like the Ernie and Bert of American politics for a while. Let me see. Twitter. Look, first, all the people who said that Twitter was going to destroy Donald Trump didn't understand what was going on. Anytime you have a new medium, a new master can come along and dominate. And so FDR was considered a true lightweight. People forget this. People thought that FDR was just like a nobody lightweight, you know, been the governor of New York, but, you know, nothing compared to his you know, relative Teddy Roosevelt. You know, FDR was nothing. But he understood radio, and he dominated. JFK was underestimated. John F. Kennedy, but he understood television, and he dominated. So did Reagan. Understood television, dominated. Obama was totally written off. He understood the internet. And back when online fundraising and viral videos were new and hot, he dominated. Trump is a creature of reality television and social media. And everything that he did was correct in terms of the new media system that we have. The villain on reality television is, what'd you say? Okay, good. The villain on reality television is always the star. American Idol, who's the star? Simon, because he's a butthead. All the Real Housewives stuff, the most famous one, whoever the one's gonna say the B word the most and slap somebody, that's the star. So you're living in a culture where, you know, saying crazy stuff doesn't get you fewer followers on Twitter, it gets you more followers on Twitter. So. A, I don't know, But either way, ain't it bad? I mean, if he's doing it himself or paying someone to do it, it's still terrible. So, yeah. So anyway, but just be clear that he's doing everything right, objectively based on how the medium works. And so the other thing he's doing is he controls you. Like I said, he didn't just run the White House, he runs your house. All he has to do is tweet something crazy and you spend 6 hours of your life that you'll never get back upset. You don't get any of these, you get none of these hours back. He's a genius. He's a master. He has you completely under his control. He can sit there in the restroom and tweet and your whole day is done. So, you might want to think about that. The Electoral College, I already told you, we had a bad outcome this time. However, I think it's a complete waste of time to do much about it, because you have no idea if you were in a different system, do you have some other outcome you wouldn't like? Just like we blew up the filibuster when the Democrats were running the Senate, and now we're all sad because ain't no filibuster. So, it's easy to fight the last war. I want to say something that's very important. The most important thing I can say to anybody here on the left or the right is this. Don't overestimate what happened in 2016. 120 million people voted. 120 million people. That's a lot of people that voted. The election was decided by 70,000 votes spread out in 3 states, Ohio, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. In those states, a total combined 10,000 in Michigan, 10,000 in Michigan, 10,000 in Michigan, and then a few in Pennsylvania and a few more in Ohio, a total of just 70,000 out of 120 million through those 3 states to Trump, and that's why he won. So you have a 70,000 vote problem, okay? You have a 70,000 vote problem. And when you look at those 70,000 votes, a majority of them had voted for Obama at least once. So you have a 70,000 vote problem that if you fix that, you can run the country forever. So why are we sitting here talking about trying to change the Constitution, which would be a lot harder? Just go get the 70,000 people back. And that's, I think, a little bit more efficient. With regard to, let me see here. We did Twitter, Electoral College, children. I tell my kids that this mess that you see is what happens when grown people on both sides don't do what they're supposed to do. You cannot have 2 healthy political parties or even 1 healthy political party and have this kind of an outcome. You can't. This is the outcome that comes when you have 2 political parties that have let down the people for way too long. Both political parties, by the way, both political parties said that NAFTA was great. Both political parties said that we could deregulate Wall Street with no problem, and we lost $1 trillion and 1 million homes. Both political parties said we should build prisons from coast to coast and destroy the black community. Both political parties said we could get in these dumb wars that we can't get out of. Both political parties let the country down for decades. And when that happens, there's going to be a rebellion. In the Democratic Party, it was Black Lives Matter and Bernie Sanders. In the Republican Party, it was the Tea Party, and then it kind of curdled into Trump. So that's what happens.
Good metaphor, by the way.
Yeah. What should we listen to besides CNN? I have in the book, the last third of the book is just positive stuff that we can do. And in the appendices, it's literally what you can read, watch, and listen to on both sides. Documentaries, podcasts, books, authors, on both sides, so that you can try to make sense of all this stuff. Both schools. I went to the University of Tennessee at Martin, which is the little one. University of Tennessee at Knoxville is one you've heard of. UT Martin is the little one. And I'm so glad. I'm so glad. My communications professors were just amazing. They were former working journalists. They weren't theoreticians. They weren't academics. They didn't know nothing about Foucault and French structuralist theory, postmodernism. Hey, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. But they knew how to meet a deadline. They knew how to train young people to go out and ask hard questions and not be afraid. They knew how to help us. You know, we were from modest backgrounds. I'm not a rich man's child. But they taught us that we could go up to anybody, that we could go up to the president of our own university. We could go up to a police officer. We could go up to the governor of the state and ask a question and expect an answer and see through it if it's a BS answer too. You know, they taught us if somebody answers in the passive voice, oh, it was decided. No. Who decided it? When was it decided? What was the vote? And when you can take a bunch of working class and poor kids from rural West Tennessee, from farms and housing projects, and turn them into real reporters, that's something. And that's what they did for me at the University of Tennessee. And that meant when I went to Yale, I didn't have all the fancy words that those kids had. I didn't understand. I didn't know they were speaking English when I first got to Yale. Somebody was talking to me, they said, well, you seem to have enrolled here for rather egalitarian reasons. And I said, what's that? I want to do public interest. Is that what you mean? What's that? And then somebody said something was paradigmatic of something else. I said, what? I said paradigmatic, you know, as or pertaining to a paradigm. I'm like, a pair of what? I'm not joking. I was like, a pair of paradigms? What? What are y'all talking about? But I had to realize, I said, listen, I'm behind, man. I'm behind. You know, these kids have gone to Andover and Oxford and all these places, and you know, they last names. I said, you know, there's some famous people named Rockefeller. Oh, you're one of them. You know? So I said, I'm behind, man. But I knew because I had gotten that education. I said, you know what? These kids are ahead of me just because they've read more books than I have. But I can stay up later than them, and I can read enough, I can catch up. And the books I don't read, I can go ask questions. I can learn everything that they know, but they're never gonna know everything that I know because of where I grew up. So, you know, I'm proud. You know, I'm proud to have gone to a good, humble, public university on a minority scholarship. A minority, I'm not ashamed. I'm a ninth generation American. And I'm the first person in my family that was born with all my rights recognized by this government. I'm the first in my family in 9 generations. So I'm not, you know, a little scholarship to a state school is very small compensation for 9 generations of slavery and segregation. So I'm not ashamed at all to say I'm a product of affirmative action. I'm proud to be a product of affirmative action. And when I got to Yale, I was behind, but I was able to catch up. And I'll tell you, by the time I graduated, there wasn't a single person, not just at the law school, but at the university, who didn't know who I was and have a feeling that I was somebody who did what I said. I said, I'm going to law school because I want to help poor people. I'm going to law school because I want to help people who don't have anything. And you can call it egalitarian if you want to. But my father fought to get out of poverty. And my father got his whole family out of poverty, but he couldn't get as many as he wanted to. So I carry on his legacy. I'm glad you asked the question, though, because, again, people think I was born at CNN. You know, they really do. They really do. Schools. What would Donald Trump say?
All right.
Hey.
Here's your question.
Yeah. You know, I think Donald Trump would probably feel badly about the way I've been talking tonight. I think he might feel that I didn't understand him very well, or that I had a bad feeling about him, a bad feeling toward him. So I think if he were here tonight to talk, he would probably try and defend himself. And he'd probably try to say, like, I am a good president, and I do care about all Americans, and I'm doing the best job I know how to do. He'd say something like that. And everybody thinks that they're good. You know, everybody thinks that they're doing the best that they can. And that's why we have to listen to each other and talk to each other. And even if somebody says something you don't agree with or something that hurts your feelings, the next day, try again. Because that person who today is your worst enemy, tomorrow could be your best friend if you keep your heart open. And so if Trump were here, we wouldn't agree. We would go back and forth. But part of what I think is important for us to remember, nobody is so bad that tomorrow they couldn't do better. Nobody. And that's true even for the president. So I hope that's helpful. And then the last two questions, what can teenagers do, and then your whole thing about the future. Oh.
Bannon.
What was the question about Bannon? Oh, third party. Yeah, okay.
It's a smart audience.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Let me just deal with Bannon really quickly. Bannon is your real threat. Bannon is your problem. Trump is not really your problem, if you're a liberal, if you're progressive. Trump is like a big dragon. Big, egotistical, driven by his appetites, but he's not really your problem. Your problem is that you have a big dragon being ridden by an evil wizard. And Bannon is the evil wizard. Bannon is very smart. Bannon is very, very bad in that he's right about just enough things to be dangerous. He's got the number of the liberals, he's got the number of the establishment Republicans, he's got the number of the mainstream media, and what he's up to is has just enough good in it to be terrible.
Is he the exception to the rule where the guy the next day is okay? Just, you know how rules always have exceptions?
Yeah. I'm an extremist on the love stuff, so here's what I'll say. I think third parties are a bad idea because you usually hurt the party closest to you. So I think it's just better, unless you have a parliamentary system, which we don't have here, it's just better to try and fix your own party. But as far as Bannon, as far as redeemability, irredeemability, I'm going to close on that. I'll close on that. With regard to what can teenagers do, I have a bunch of stuff in the book that I think you'll like. There's all kind of stuff you can do. But the main thing I would point out is that you should never underestimate, bless you, your ability to have a tremendous impact. First of all, you may have noticed your parents are like totally out of it. They don't know anything about what's cool, about what music is good, which apps are like popular.
Our parents are right there.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. But
they're really supportive of the school.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think we should go there. They're wonderful people. They know so much. You want Emily back, don't you?
Exactly. So your parents, of course, despite the wonderfulness of all the things that they've done, but like basically, like you're the arbiter of what's cool. Young people, if it's cool to you to be disrespectful, then that will be cool. If it's cool to you to not be, then it won't be cool. And what you read and watch and listen to, what you post, what you like, what you share, has tremendous impact on the country, on your peer group. And so, you may feel like, oh, well, nobody cares about me and or whatever, I don't have any power. You don't have the power to change what happens in the White House, but you have the power to change what happens in your schoolhouse. And that's power. That's real power. And, you know, if you care about an issue, you can make that issue cool. I mean, if you care about women's rights, if you care about the environment, if you care about LGBTQ stuff, if you care about, you know, defending Muslims, whatever you care about, you can make it cool. You can have an event like a spoken word event, like a poetry slam, a party with a purpose, like with a theme. And the great thing about if you have a party with a theme, with a purpose, grown people always fall for it. They think it's amazing. It's like, right? So you can get permissions for stuff that your peers who are not political can't, because they just want to have like a party and it's like everybody's afraid it's like a rave and there might be drugs and stuff. And so they never get permissions to do anything. But you're like, I'm doing this for women's rights, and then everybody helps you, right? So if you're a political young person, you actually can kind of bridge the grown people and the young people. And so you have a lot of power. And what you really want to be working on at your age, don't worry about Trump and all this sort of stuff, or the Democrats or Pelosi. You want to get good at influencing your peers. That's your job. Just getting good at influencing your peers and not being influenced by them. See, that's the trick. See, you're going to have a tendency as a young person to post something and then look to see how many people liked it. And if you didn't get that many likes, you're going to feel terrible. And if you got a bunch of likes, you're going to feel really good for about half an hour. And then you got to post something else. And the problem with that is that you put your whole self-esteem up for auction every day. And I'm going to tell you, your self-esteem can't be measured by one of these little things in the first place. And it's much more important for you to get good at being the influencer. You know, take something that you believe in, some literature that you like, some music that you like, some show that you like, something that you like, and figure out a way to advocate for it and stick up for it and build community around it so that you have support for what you want to do. And it'd be better for you to have 5 people that you really like, who are good people, who you think are cool, who like your stuff, than to have 500 people like your stuff for the wrong reason. And so this is kind of, you know, what I think about when I'm dealing with people at your age group. But you have tremendous, tremendous power, and I hope that you use it for good. Now, with regard to what you're saying about the future, and then with regard to Bannon, and I'll close. You know, Newt is a futurist, and I am a futurist. Newt is very aware that we're going from the industrial to the digital, and, you know, so am I. His ideas about what to do about it are different than mine. But what I will say is this. The White Walkers are coming. The White Walkers are coming. Now, if you don't watch Game of Thrones, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But if you watch Game of Thrones, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The White Walkers, and in this case, it's the robots. Robots, artificial intelligence, driverless cars. The real threat, see, the problem in Game of Thrones is everybody's fighting over, you know, the stuff that's happening in the internal politics. But there's a massive threat that's coming that's going to wipe them all out if they don't get their act together. And while we're fighting over tweets and nonsense, artificial intelligence is about to take lawyers' jobs, lawyers, accountants, doctors, robots, driverless cars. I mean, you're talking about massive disruption in, you know, the next 5 to 15 years. So it's important. There's no liberal answer to the fact that driverless cars are going to wipe out all the truck driving jobs in the next 10 years. There's no conservative answer. We need each other. So if we actually stop talking about stuff that we don't, sorry, so sorry, so sorry, so sorry, it's late. If we actually stop talking, it's late. The stuff that we don't agree on, it's late. The stuff that we don't agree on, we're not going to agree on. So we can argue about that for a limited period of time. But there's stuff that we don't even understand that we need each other for. And that brings me to the last thing I'll say, which is about Bannon.
I was just saying, if future questions could be answered tomorrow in detention. Yeah.
You know, the thing about Bannon and the thing about even those, the actual Nazis, these people who were marching around with torches, saying all this anti-Jewish stuff, all this anti-black stuff, who got in a car and assassinated an American protester using ISIS tactics, driving into a crowd. That's ISIS tactics. White terrorism, white nationalist terrorism in our country. Even those people, obviously the person who committed that murder should be put under the jail. But even those people who we have to fight, because if that becomes normalized and can grow, then you literally can have the party of Lincoln, the Republican Party, a great party. The party of Lincoln can become the party of Bannon. It can become a home for some of the worst ideas in human history to just flourish. We're on the edge of that right now. And Republicans should be very concerned about that and quit apologizing for it and pretending it's not happening. It's happening. But even those people, and all conservatives, all liberals, all progressives, all libertarians should be fighting against the dirty right. I don't call them the alt-right. They're the dirty right. They traffic in violence and anti-Jewish stuff, anti-black stuff, sexism, authoritarianism. We should be fighting them with everything that we have. And yet, there's something called Nazis. And there's something called former Nazis. There's something called KKK member. And there's something called former KKK member. Which means there's a scenario, there's a possibility that 10 years from now, right here on this stage, one of those young men who were out there with those torches could be sitting here telling you how they came out of hatred. How they came out of hatred. And those people, some of them, they could not only be your closest allies, some of them could wind up being your best friend. We just don't know. And so we have to fight with everything that we have, but not just against them. Not just against them. We have to fight for them. We have to fight for them. I don't want you to be with those people. I don't want you to be with those ideas. I need you over here. There are children that need you. There are neighborhoods that need you. I need you. See, that's a different way of fighting. I'm not just calling you out. I'm calling you up. I'm calling you in. I need you. See, that's what I'm hoping the book will inspire. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Great. Thank you. Woo! Thank you all for spending time, for coming out. I also want to thank Emily. Things like this don't happen without a driving force that a little school like us can have an event. Thank you for being a part of this. I want to thank all the staff who helped put this together in a very short time. And I always say the greatest teachers touch not only your mind, but touch your heart. And you touched our hearts tonight. Thank you for being here. We really do appreciate you.